Hello and welcome to the 59th New York Film Festival. I'm Dan Sullivan. I'm a programmer here at Film at Lincoln Center and one of the programmers of the festival's revivals section. You've all just seen Chameleon Street, directed by Wendell B. Jr. I'm very, very pleased to say that we're joined now by the writer, director, star of Chameleon Street, Wendell B. Harris Jr. Hello, Wendell.
Hello, Dan.
So, well, first I want to just thank the distributor of the film, Arbelos, for their really remarkable work on this restoration. And we're really excited that more people are going to be able to see the film now. So thank you to them.
Yeah.
Why don't we just we can start towards the beginning, I guess. Maybe that makes the most sense. Specifically, I guess with the figures who you mentioned, one of the early title cards of the film, William Douglas Street Jr. and Eric Dupont. I would imagine that your sort of your conception of the film kind of began with you're encountering these two figures. And I saw in an interview that I believe you read about at least one of them in the newspaper originally. Could you tell us a bit about sort of the prehistory of the film?
You know, last night I watched you for half an hour talking to Jay Hoberman about Yiddish film, and I was blown away. It was great. A little controversial, but great. Anyway, your question is, when did I actually encounter Doug Street?
Or just maybe how he came on your radar and sort of how that germinated into the concept for the film.
Well, it was in the spring of 1985. I read in the Detroit News, in the Sunday supplement section, this long article about this guy named Doug Street, who since 1971 had been just doing one impersonation after another. And the moment I read that article, two things struck me, Dan. Number one, it was a great part. Number two, it would be a great representation of what goes on under the skin of this country.
Yeah, no, that I think anyone who's seen the film would agree. And I wanted to talk about performance in the film and how that kind of operates. But first, I guess I wanted to know a little more about the writing process, sort of what you remember of the experience of writing the film. And it does strike me that, you know, we often say in with fiction that we're dealing with like an unreliable narrator, and it occurs to me that in this film that figure kind of, well, it's both like important to the film, but it's also like it functions a little bit differently than maybe what people are used to, because of course the main character is a con man.
Right.
So could you just could you just tell us how the writing proceeded and sort of maybe some of what you were thinking about in terms of the place of the narrator in the film?
Well, you know, Dan, I have said all along that this film is totally from Doug. You know, I didn't talk to his kindergarten teacher or his high school girlfriend or his mother or anybody who knew him. Later, that would be interesting, but I only focused for 3 years on getting Doug's story. And, you know, that entailed a lot of video interviews, audio interviews, letters, phone conversations. He was moved twice from one prison to another during that 3-year period. And I should also say that while I worked on the script for 3 years and I interviewed Doug for 3 years, that 3-year period is essentially shaped by money. You know, all that time we were making presentations to potential investors to get the budget together. And that took 3 years. You know, I was ready to shoot the thing after the first year. I had a totally different script, but getting the money took 3 years. So I simply kept writing and rewriting and rewriting. Ultimately, we had 36 versions of the film, or drafts. So that's it.
Yeah. What was in the course of interviewing Doug Street? I mean, I guess setting aside just for a moment, sort of the question of like financing and the difficulties of financing. Sort of what was your relationship like? Like, what did he make of your desire to make this film?
Well, he was gung ho, and he signed a contract for a certain percentage up front and after. So, it was a business relationship at which he profited financially.
And do you think so what did you make of like the difficulties of finding the financing at the time? I mean, maybe there are there are like obvious factors and not so obvious factors that go into that, I guess. But yeah, I'm just kind of
what did I make of the process?
Yeah, because it was your first, it was your first film, and then to encounter these kinds of difficulties, 3 years of trying to secure the financing. I don't know. I'm just curious what kind of impressions that left you with for filmmaking as a whole.
I can tell you exactly. I mean, the experience was like, I always say, scraping dried blood off the sidewalk with a butter knife. On and presentation after presentation. But that's the price you pay to be an independent filmmaker making an independent film. It was long and drawn out, but each step of the way, progress was being made. So,
Well, I mean, like I was saying earlier, I definitely wanted to focus a bit on performance in the film and the performers. Maybe we could just start by talking about the casting, because I think that you likely had some very specific ideas about what you wanted. I believe you're a trained actor, and so I'm sure your background in that entered into some of your calculations, some of your kind of conception of what you wanted the performances in the film to feel like. So could you tell us a bit about how you found the people who populated the film, sort of, just what the process was like of sort of filming film with performers besides yourself?
What was the process of feeling? Well, as you're talking, so many things go through my mind. Like, for example, the Masquerade Ball went through so many different permutations, so many different rewrites, simply because we were negotiating with different bands to play the punk rock band Phantomus Judex. So, we talked to the Thompson Twins, Till Tuesday, George Clinton, and for each of these, I rewrote the script to, reflect. And George Clinton was set to do it. And then at the last minute, at the very last minute, he made a financial demand that we could not meet. So then I had to rewrite it again. But, the process of, I don't know, your question is, did I find it a challenge to cast?
No, my question is more just sort of, just how it kind of unfolded, like where you were finding, where you found some of the, key actors in the film, sort of. I'm just, my assumption is that you have, given your background, you probably had a pretty specific idea of how you wanted the performances in the film to be. So I'm just wondering how you then find the people to embody those performances.
Yeah, it's a good question. And man, believe me, it was quite a saga. We went after a lot of people for Gabrielle Street. We tried to get in touch with Oprah. I could not get through to Oprah, but we negotiated for a while with LaToya Jackson, Kathy Tyson, and at one point I was trying to get Brother Theodore to play Dr. Hand, the psychiatrist. And all of those negotiations were essentially shaped and snuffed out by money. Like Joseph Jackson, he wanted $10,000 for LaToya to do 5 days work. And, that just ended it right there.
Well, yeah, I definitely want to talk about money, maybe both figuratively and literally. But first, I just one more question about performance. And I'm always in when directors appear in their own films, I'm always interested in how they negotiate sort of appearing in front of the camera, and also carrying out the direction of the film. And when I was rewatching Chameleon Street yesterday, it occurred to me that in this film, it's even that sort of is that's even more intense than usual here. Like it's because it's a film about a performer. You're both directing the film, and you're a performer who's playing a performer. And so I'm just kind of I'm just curious, how did you find the experience of directing the film, appearing in front of the camera, and I don't know. Yeah, I guess just kind of like what that dynamic was like for you.
Well, Dan, I'm going to give you an exclusive, because you know, I was not supposed to direct the film.
Hmm.
My family, my board, everybody wanted me to write the film, play the part, and get somebody who had directed before. So we talked to Marlon Brando, Melvin Van Peebles, Michael Apted, Fred Schlepsy, I think is the way his name is pronounced. Before settling on Wendell B. Harris Jr. And once again, that was largely a financial situation. So when the actual directing came to, you know, you say you're interested in that facet. Are you thinking about doing it someday? Acting and writing and directing yourself?
No, I'm probably more likely to become a con man than a film director.
Well, I was just going to say that, you know, you compartmentalize. And there were times in the heat of shooting it when the director would take the lead actor into an empty, silent room and talk to him in whatever message had to be talked to or covered or, you know, communicated. So I was extremely cognizant of the potential pitfalls. On the other hand, since the age of 11, Orson Welles had been a shining beacon to me as far as being weaned on Citizen Kane. So it wasn't like a foreign idea when it finally, but it wasn't supposed to be me. I was not supposed to be the director.
You're mentioning Orson Welles feels just seems really appropriate. I feel like F for Fake and Chameleon Street would be a really dynamite double feature.
Yeah.
So then maybe actually, yeah, why don't we talk about con men and capitalism? I think this is kind of some of what you're pointing to when you're talking about, you know, like social, sort of like social economic phenomena that's kind of below the skin of this country, as I think you put it. And I've watched the film a few times now, and each time I kind of feel like more and more that like your interpretation of Doug Street is almost like it's like the ideal subject of capitalism in a way, the way that he kind of it's almost like it's a like he embodies like a much purer form of some kind of like essential grift or some ability to move from like context to context, setting to setting, like sort of obtaining whatever he needs in the given moment, sort of. So I was just kind of wondering if this was like an interest of yours, which predated reading the newspaper article, and maybe just kind of how you thought through the characterization of someone like Doug Street, I guess, because it's obviously like a complicated portrayal, and it's not as simple as just like he's a bad guy who does manipulative things in order to get what he wants, right? It's like more profound than that. So yeah, I guess from whence this original interest in kind of the figure of the confidence man?
Well, Dan, I'm not quite sure how to respond. So many things were going through my mind as you asked that question.
Sorry, it was kind of long-winded.
Well, no, I mean, you covered a lot of ground. One thing that came to my mind as, you know, you're framing Doug Street in whatever paradigm, a capitalistic paradigm, a color paradigm, sociopath, I mean, whatever you want to. What strikes me after 30 years is that the only really negative, consistently negative, sustained negative reaction I have gotten to Chameleon Street has been, once in a while, Dan, somebody who actually knew him, somebody who actually interfaced with him. Once in a while, I hear from these people, and they are never pleased that a film was made about Doug, and they feel as if knowing Doug had in some way ravished their lives. And that was ex-wives, family members. No one was immune to the effect of his impersonations.
So do you think for them that it just comes from a place of them feeling like you know, victimized or traumatized, or do you think it's kind of, it's like a shame, sort of it's like a shamed sort of response? It's kind of like the feeling of having been taken for a ride, I guess, by someone, and then seeing a record of that, I guess, in a film or something like that.
Yeah. You know, Doug's modus operandi always involves leeching time, emotion, betrayal, devotion from whoever he interacts with. So people don't like it. And, you know, I just was thinking about that as you were asking. The fact that it's a very, very draining lifestyle, and it drains Doug. You know, there's a photograph floating around on the net of Doug's mugshot that was taken in 2015. That was for, he impersonated a West Point general in full regalia uniform, and he was incarcerated for that. And that photograph shows how, you know, the choices he's made for a lifetime have drained him. I mean, you know, I mean, everybody gets drained, and it shows in your face. I'm not saying anything different, except that what is drained from Doug's face is the cost. The cost.
Yeah, I mean, I think you you sort of gestured towards this a little bit a few minutes ago. I wanted to, this was something I wanted to ask about, and I think it's related. The sort of, yeah, the difference between your impressions of the film, maybe when it first premiered, when it was first kind of coming out in the world. And I imagine, you know, after years of writing and pursuing financing and trying to carry the thing off, and then it finally premieres and so on, like obviously you're going to feel about it very differently today versus then. And I'm just kind of, I'm just wondering, you know, sort of what your impressions are of watching Chameleon Street in 2021, just kind of, you know, I guess generally. It just seems like it's, I mean, maybe I'm wrong here, but it's taken on this almost this sort of increased resonance today, I think, because of just the way that people's lives are with like, you know, the amount of like self-representation we do on like the internet and at our jobs and you know, so on. So yeah, I don't know what's it like watching Chameleon Street in 2021, I guess.
Well, like the experience of Black people in America, it's you know, it's like you're frozen in time.
Hmm.
You know, Black people for 400 years are frozen in time. And as I speak to you today, you know, I essentially, well, you know, when the film came out initially in 1990, I got these amazing reactions from people. And then it was almost as if people who saw the film in 1990 and 91, they thought that it represented something new that was about to burst forth in terms of how Blacks are portrayed in media, in narrative motion pictures. I got that from a lot of people all over. And that really struck me, because after Chameleon Street was totally suppressed, I remembered those people who thought that this meant, you know, something wonderful was about to happen in cinema. A door had been opened and we were all about to go through it. Now, 30 years later, you know, it has become all about trying to offset the suppression of the film. I mean, when, you know, as you know, you well know, distribution is key. And Hollywood could not stop the film from being made, but they could sure stop it from being distributed. And as Tambeo Benson reminded me a couple of days ago, Warner Brothers paid $250,000 for the remake rights of Chameleon Street, but refused to distribute the film, as they all refused, all the studios. So, oh, by the way, that is history being made, because that had never happened before. that they had bought a film, remake rights, not sequel rights, remake rights, and would refuse to distribute the film.
Almost like buying the remake rights as a means of suppression, sort of.
Well, you know, that's a fine point, because I was just saying the other day, and I've said it before, that $250,000, which didn't begin to pay back the budget, but that $250,000 feels almost like some kind of compensatory consolation prize money, or I don't know. I don't know.
Well, I think we're almost out of time. I wanted to ask one more question before we go. It's yeah, I mean, it's a question of sort of influences, but I'm, you know, in rewatching the films, I was particularly interested to know sort of what non cinematic artworks were kind of, if any, were on your mind at the time. It strikes me that the film maybe shares some things with with some novels. So I was thinking maybe you had some literature on your mind, perhaps in making the film. But and I guess films could also be influenced too. But I'm always especially interested to hear about what non-films are of interest to filmmakers. Yeah, were there any novels, paintings?
Nobody has ever asked me that before. As writer, actor, producer Ron Lazar has often pointed out, Cyrano de Bergerac inspired the ugly redneck bar scene. Ralph Ellison's Invisible Man, and I'm leaving something out. Well, it's a good question, and nobody's ever asked me that before. In a way, all my life, you know, you are being prepared for it. I mean, when you read about, you know, when you're 12 years old, you read W.E.B. Du Bois talk about the two-ness of the Black experience in this country. It was always the two-ness, that double two-faced experience. And that is at the core of Chameleon Street. You know, and the fact that it exposes the social and class structure in this country always makes it resonate and reverberate. You know, at what point are people reacting to Street because he's Black, in spite of he's Black, or how much, what does that have to do with people's relationship with doctors, making gods out of doctors, and all you got to do is say he's a doctor, and all of a sudden, you know, I mean, how much of that is part of it?
No.
And anyway, Did I even begin to answer your question?
You did, and then we went somewhere else that was interesting too. So it's all good. But I think we should yeah, for reasons of time, I guess we should leave it there. But Wendell, this has been really fun. It's been really meaningful to have you join us. And I'm very, very happy to say that the efforts to suppress Chameleon Street have ultimately failed. The film will now circulate widely, but yeah, just thank you again so much for both the film and your time.
Dan, can I ask you one quick question?
Sure.
Do you think that streaming is more powerful than broadcast television in terms of getting to a mass audience?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I try not to analyze economics of show business because it's too depressing. But you know, I mean, but I don't have cable, you know, so that I guess that I think from as far as I can tell, and I'm no expert, yeah, I think streaming is probably a little more wide-reaching now than broadcast. But I'm sure someone will write in the comments below this video that I don't know what I'm talking about. So
yeah, me too. Me too. I'm sure I'll say the same, but I have enjoyed meeting and talking to you. I'm going to start watching all of your interviews, which I saw.
Don't
you
do
have
that.
interviewed a ton of people.
Yeah, I've been here a while.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You need to publish that stuff, man. In a transcript. Yeah.
You sound like my mother. But yeah, thank you, Wendell, and yeah, we'll leave it there.
Okay, thanks now.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Bye.